to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On today's headlines. Taiwan's army held another live-fire drill Thursday after Beijing ended its largest ever military exercises around the island as it repeated threats to bring the self-ruled democracy under its control. U.S. House Speaker of Representatives Nancy Pelosi says she is proud of her trip to Taiwan, which was intended to praise Taiwan and not to talk about China. Sri Lanka's ousted leader Gotabaya Rajapaksa is seeking a new safe haven in Thailand as his Singapore visa runs out. And sad news here in the country, Lydia De Vega Mercado, Asia's former sprint queen, passed away after a 4-year battle with breast cancer. First in our news, Taiwan's army held another live-fire drill after Beijing ended its largest ever military exercises around the island and as it repeated threats to bring the self-ruled democracy under its control. Beijing has raged at a trip to Taiwan last week by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the highest-ranking elected American official to visit in decades, staging days of air and sea drills around the island that raised tensions to their highest levels in years.
保护家园本来就是我们国军的责任，所以我们不论是情势如何，我们平常就是不断的在训练，不断的累积我们自己的实力，这才是保护我们国家最好的一个方式。
Taiwan has accused China of using the Pelosi visit as an excuse to kickstart drills that would allow it to rehearse for an invasion. Lu Woi-jie, spokesman for Taiwan's 8th Army Corps, told AFP its forces fired howitzers and target flares as part of the defensive drill on Thursday morning. He also said the exercise today in Taiwan's southernmost county of Pingtung began at 8:30 a.m. local time and lasted about an hour. The military has played down their significance. They said they were already scheduled and were not in response to China's war games. This latest exercise came also after China's military indicated its own drills had come to an end on Wednesday, saying its forces successfully completed various tasks in the Taiwan Strait while vowing to continue patrolling its waters. But in the same announcement, China added that it would continue to carry out military training and prepare for war. In a separate white paper published on Wednesday, China's Taiwan Affairs Office said Beijing would not renounce the use of force against its neighbor and reserve the option of taking all necessary measures. As a result of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, China has suspended China-U.S. talks on climate change, and all the consequences should be borne by the United States. That is according to the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. China also said it will continue to push forward the goal of carbon peaking and neutrality, actively participate in negotiations on major channels of climate change. Let's listen in.
The egregious impact of this visit, China has suspended its climate talks with the U.S., and all consequences arising therefrom shall be borne by the U.S. As a responsible major country, we will continue to participate in international and multilateral cooperation on climate change. As a country committed to real action, we have made a solemn pledge to peak carbon dioxide emissions before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. We are also trying to formulate and implement a 1+N policy framework for low-carbon development and green transition. We will pursue our carbon peak and carbon neutrality targets, participate in main channel negotiations on climate change, provide other developing countries with support, and make our own contributions to tackling global climate change. Third, the U.S. should shoulder its historical responsibilities and obligations on climate change. It is our consistent belief that to address climate change, it's not enough to just chant slogans without doing one's own part. Not long ago, the U.S. Supreme Court decided it would limit the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's powers to curb greenhouse gas emissions, and it has been sanctioning and suppressing Chinese solar companies, citing so-called Xinjiang-related issues as a pretext. This has dealt a direct blow to the atmosphere of our cooperation and the climate response of China and other countries. And such self-contradictory moves make the world question U.S. capability and seriousness on addressing climate change. The U.S. should deliver on its historical responsibilities and due obligations and stop looking around for excuses for its inaction on climate change. Next question, please.
Beijing has raged at the trip by Pelosi, the highest-ranking elected U.S. official, to visit Taiwan in decades, ripping up a series of talks and cooperation agreements with Washington, most notably on climate change and defense. In an exclusive interview with foreign policy security analyst Mr. Lucio Blanco Pitlo III, he said he hopes the situation would be resolved peacefully, as the Philippines would be affected in an event of a miscalculation during this exercises. He estimated there are more than 140,000 Filipinos, including contract workers, in the island that would have to be repatriated in the event of an escalation. He also said factors like the Philippines' proximity to Taiwan, our large OFW population, our trade and investment relations with China, our mutual defense agreements with the U.S., entangle the Philippines in this potential diplomatic and geopolitical powder keg. Meanwhile, China again commented on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, saying it was U.S. that broke their promise and violated China's sovereignty and supported secessionists. He also said China's countermeasures in response to the visit was justified, necessary, proper, and legitimate. Again, let's listen in.
Have always opposed visits to Taiwan by members of the U.S. Congress. Nancy Pelosi is the third highest-ranking political figure in the U.S. She traveled to Taiwan on a U.S. military aircraft. While she was there, she repeatedly mentioned herself being there on behalf of the U.S. and described her trip as an official visit. The DPP authorities touted the visit as a major breakthrough in Taiwan-U.S. relations. All these show that Pelosi's visit to Taiwan is a major political provocation that upgrades U.S.-Taiwan exchanges. This goes against the U.S.'s commitment of only maintaining unofficial relations with Taiwan in the Sino-U.S. joint communique on the establishment of diplomatic relations. This goes against the One China principle. This goes against the principle in international law of non-interference in others' internal affairs, which is enshrined in the UN Charter. Since 4 months ago, China has time again made clear to the U.S. through multiple channels at various levels our stern position of firmly opposing Pelosi's visit to the Taiwan region. However, the U.S. has chosen to pursue the wrong course of action in disregard of China's dissuasion and warnings. It is the U.S. that has gone back on its commitment, not China. It is the U.S. that has infringed on China's sovereignty, not the other way around. It is the U.S. that supports Taiwan independent separatist activities, not China supporting separatist activities in the U.S. The U.S. made the provocation first, and China has been compelled to take legitimate countermeasures, which are justified, lawful, necessary, and proportionate. The U.S. has been going further down the path of fudging, hollowing out, and distorting the One China principle, and yet it accused China of changing the status quo. The U.S. conducts more than 100 military drills in waters around China on an annual basis, and yet it accuses China of overreacting. This is gangster logic. China does not accept it, nor will the international community recognize it. No matter how many times the U.S. violates China's sovereignty and interferes in China's internal affairs, China will not hesitate to fight back each of these provocations. We will never allow our sovereignty and territorial integrity to be trampled and sabotaged. If the U.S. truly hopes to adhere to international law and uphold all countries' sovereignty and territorial integrity as it claims to, it should play no games but return to the One China principle and the 3 Sino-U.S. joint communiques. the U.S. must not act recklessly and stop going further down the doomed path. The U.S. should give up the attempt to use Taiwan to contain China and do right things and take concrete steps to facilitate peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait.
Meanwhile, U.S. Speaker of the House, Representatives Nancy Pelosi said she is proud of her trip to Taiwan, which was intended to praise Taiwan and not to talk about China. Let's listen in.
We follow the lead of our president, who made clear that one of his priorities was a strong Asian Pacific initiative to increase our cooperation in those fields: security, economy, and governance. It was a remarkable trip in which I'm very proud to have traveled. We're like 6 co-chairs of the delegation because we didn't go there to talk about China. We went there to praise Taiwan. And we went there to show our friendship, to say China cannot isolate Taiwan. So that's what it was about. That is incidental to me, of no relevance whatsoever. Our purpose in going to Taiwan was to say that we have this strong relationship built on the status quo, which we support, which is really important because they're saying, well, we're trying to upset. No, the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979, at the same time as our change of recognition, established the terms of our relationship.
In today's other news, Sri Lanka's ousted leader Gotabaya Rajapaksa is seeking a new haven in Thailand as his Singapore visa runs out. That is according to a source in the Thai Foreign Ministry today. Rajapaksa fled to the Maldives on July 13, and then he went to Singapore, where he announced his resignation. That is after months of protests over the country's economic meltdown. Tens of thousands of people overran his official residence last month over acute shortages of food, fuel, and medicine endured by Sri Lanka's 22 million people since late last year. His Singapore visa runs out on Thursday. He had applied for an extension, but it had not come through as of Wednesday morning, according to a close associate of Rajapaksa telling AFP in Colombo. The source said Rajapaksa now planned to go to Thailand for a short stay and return to Singapore. The Thai Foreign Ministry confirmed it had received a request from Colombo for the 73-year-old deposed leader to visit Thailand and an assurance that he would not seek political asylum there. There was no immediate comment from the Sri Lankan embassy in Singapore, which had supported Rajapaksa's attempt to stay for longer in the city-state. Sri Lankans arriving in Singapore get a 30-day visa, but Singapore authorities said they had initially given Rajapaksa only 2 weeks and later extended the visa by another 2 weeks. The Rajapaksa confidant told AFP that he was keen to return home as protests against his administration had fizzled out. But his successor, Ranil Wickremesinghe, had advised him against an early return. Over 400,000 people, 2,300 vehicles, 15 aircraft, 127 vehicles have been mobilized to respond to Storm Mulan, the second of its kind to hit Vietnam this year. Storm Mulan weakened into a tropical depression after entering the Gulf of Tonkin on Wednesday night. It caused heavy rains in northern and north-central Vietnam. The tropical depression lay centered over Quang Ninh province and the port city of Haiphong at 4 a.m. today, with wind speeds of 49 kilometers per hour. It has caused heavy rains in Quang Ninh, Haiphong, and Lang Son province. Vietnamese carriers have delayed flights to and from Haiphong this morning to avoid impacts. The tropical depression is forecast to move west-northwest on Thursday, deep into northern Vietnam, and continue to weaken. Northern Vietnam, as well as the north-central provinces of Thanh Mo and Nghệ An, are forecast to receive rainfall of between 70 to 200 millimeters today and Friday. Rainfall in Hanoi in the 2 days is estimated at 70 to 150 millimeters. Vietnam should expect 10 to 12 storms and low-pressure areas in the east this year, with around half making landfall. The Department of Health projected that the current surge in COVID cases will last until the end of this year. In a press conference, DOH Officer in Charge Maria Rosario Vergere noted that cases in the National Capital Region alone are already projected to jump to over 10,000 daily by early October. Vergere likewise said it is crucial for schools to designate safety officers in their respective establishments to monitor the students. Take a look.
Kapag nagtuloy-tuloy na yun pong compliance sa minimum public health standards ay hindi masyadong nasusunod, kapag nagtuloy-tuloy na ang mobility pa rin ay mataas at pag nagtuloy-tuloy na pumasok ang mga subvariants ng Omicron dito sa ating bansa, maaring mangyari ang mga projection na to. But hopefully not, because we can control. We have control over two of these assumptions. And that would be the uptake of boosters at saka yung compliance to minimum public health standards. So kung magkakaroon po tayo ng isa o dalawang kaso sa isang classroom, isasara po ang classroom na yun pong mga batang kasama nila sa loob, especially unvaccinated, who just need to quarantine in their homes. Imo-monitor po sila araw-araw para makita natin kung further ang transmission dito sa cluster na ito. But it's the same protocol as we do with the other settings na meron tayo. Ito yung kailangan para maitaas natin yung immunity ng population. That's why we are doing the very best we can so that we can be able to still ramp up coverage for the first boosters as well as for our senior citizens.
Vergere said 906 additional BA.5 cases, 11 additional BA.4 cases, and 7 additional BA.2.12.1 cases have been detected in the country in the Health Department's latest genome sequencing. For the additional BA.5 cases, there are at least 10 individuals from all regions except for Northern Mindanao, Davao Region, Soxargen, Caraga, and Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Earlier, she also stressed that the country cannot close its borders for every new or re-emerging infectious disease, as it could lead to more people getting hungry because of its effect on the economy. The Department of Education on Wednesday assured the public that schools are expected to have an infection control plan or strategy for the opening of in-person classes this month, considering the possible surge of cases of COVID-19. The DepEd made the statement in a press briefing in response to the Octa Research Group's pronouncement that there may be a possible case uptick once the in-person classes resume. Let's listen in.
Siyempre po, we take the Octa research seriously. Nakakatulong naman po yan as guidance for us. However, if you look at other studies also like UNICEF, there is actually no direct correlation between in-person classes and transmission. As long as nandyan po yung minimum health and safety standards natin. Yung, lalo na yung pagsusuot ng face mask, importante po yan. Ngayon, as to the schools, according to Department Order number 34, aside from the minimum health and safety standards required therein, kami po ay we are also asking the schools to have what we call a infection control plan or infection containment strategy. Kasi hindi nga natin masasabi, baka may mag-positive po na estudyante. Kailangan may plano yung bawat schools kung ano po yung gagawin nila, kung ano yung protocols nila dyan. And aside from that, of course, kami po ay nakikiusap sa mga magulang na tulungan din tayo dito because it all starts at home. Pag napansin po ng ating mga magulang na may simptomas na yung ating mga bata, wag na po nating papasukin whether or not confirmed na COVID, just to make sure na hindi po tayo magkaroon ng transmission in schools.
The DepEd, meanwhile, assured the public it is coordinating with the Department of Health to promote the government's vaccination campaign, as well as counseling that will be launched per region. The Education Department maintained its stance that the vaccination remains voluntary and that no one will be discriminated against, especially since they are pushing for the face-to-face setup to address the learning loss. The news continues. Zero now, in Focus. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI, the Philippine Food Exporters, or PhilFoodEx, and the Philippine Exporters Confederation, or PhilExport, are calling on the government to immediately look into the crippling supply of sugar that is expected to hurt both the local food processors and manufacturers and the consumers in general. They are urging the Marcos administration to allow the importation of sugar as a precautionary measure to address the shortage in supply and the increasing prices of refined sugar and sweetened food and beverage products. According to the Sugar Regulatory Administration, or SRA, the cost of refined sugar in Metro Manila is approximately 115 pesos per kilo. It is likely to spike up if supply is not immediately addressed. They also said that while they recognize the need to protect our sugar producers and millers, they also need to strike a balance and consider expanding import requirement before the situation worsens, which could lead to higher inflation. Refined sugar is an essential component in food manufacturing. Since 2015, they've been requesting the SRA to allow domestic food manufacturers and processors to import low-cost sugar to help them level the playing field against imported sugary products coming into the country at cheaper prices. However, this long-standing advocacy has not progressed, and SRA instead issued Sugar Order Number 1, which intends to allocate 100% of sugar production to the domestic market for crop year 2021-2022. They said that while they believe that the new sugar allocation may benefit and protect the farmers, it also puts the greater majority of consumers and the food manufacturing sector at a disadvantage. This is because the, quote, B sugar allocation will be based on current domestic prices, which are considerably higher, ranging from 85 pesos to 115 pesos per kilo, compared with world market prices, which only cost from 32 to 35 pesos per kilo, thus putting the Philippines behind Asean countries who enjoy a lower cost of sugar imports or sugar inputs sourced from the world market. Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister James Marape was sworn in for a second term Tuesday after an election hit by violence and alleged corruption that also ended a 5-year absence of women in parliament. He reiterated his pledge to make Papua New Guinea the richest black nation on earth. Let's listen in.
My statement on 30th of May 2019, I said Papua New Guinea must be the richest black Christian nation on earth. I said Papua New Guinea must become an economy that has peaked past 200 billion kina by the turn of this decade. I said Papua New Guinea must be a country that takes back more from our resources and plow back into our domestic economy and enable all parts of our country to benefit from whatever resource. By the leaders who were part of the 2019 movement to make a statement that it is about time this country gets back on the road that the fathers who went before us at 1968 and 1975 saw, and a road that leads to equal opportunity for all. Doesn't matter which part of our country you come from, highlands or lowland.
James Marape.
Addressing concerns raised by Commonwealth election observer teams over bribery allegations and missing names from voter rolls, Marape also flagged a review of polling. He said we must reform our electoral processes. It is evident that maintaining the status quo on this is no longer an option. Among the newly elected members were Rufina Peter and Kessie Sawang, the first female candidates confirmed to have secured a seat in parliament. Their victories marked a return of women to national politics after none won seats in the previous election in 2017. More updates on the floods in South Korea. The death toll on the record-breaking rains and flooding has risen to 11, according to officials today, with 8 more people still missing as Seoul struggles to clean up after the deluge. Take a look.
피해로 좀 당황스럽고요. 좀 11년 전에도 이런 피해가 있었는데 대책을 못 세운 것 같아서 좀 안타깝습니다.
2 days of torrential rain flooded streets and subway stations in the capital, with President Yoon Suk-yeol saying it was the heaviest rainfall since Seoul weather records began 115 years ago. Of the 11 dead, 6 were in Seoul, 3 in Gyeonggi Province, and 2 in Gangwon Province, according to data from the Interior Ministry. 3 of the 8 missing were from the capital. More than 5,300 people were forced to evacuate their homes. At an official meeting on relief efforts, South Korean Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said the government had already completed the bulk of emergency repair work. President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. on Thursday mourned the passing of Filipino sports icon Lydia De Vega Mercado. In a Facebook post, Marcos sent his condolences to the loved ones of De Vega Mercado. He said, "I joined the entire nation in mourning the untimely demise of former Asian sprint queen Lydia De Vega after a 4-year battle with breast cancer. My sincerest condolences to her family and loved ones," he said. Marcos also honored De Vega Mercado, Asia's former sprint queen, for her contribution to the sports industry. He recalled that De Vega Mercado won the 100-meter gold medal in the 1982 and 86 Asian Games and ruled the sprint double in the Asian Athletics Championship in 1983 and 1987. Lydia was once touted as the fastest woman in Asia, and she placed the Philippines in the map of international politics, the president said. He also said that she is also a 9-time Southeast Asian Games gold medalist, all in her favorite event, the 100-meter dash. Lydia was also a 2-time Olympian, having represented the Philippines in the 1984 Los Angeles and 1988 Seoul Olympics, he added. De Vega Mercado, 56, passed away on Wednesday evening. Her daughter, Stephanie Mercado Königswarter, announced in a Facebook post. Now, Lydia De Vega, as mentioned, Asia's former sprint queen, passed away after a 4-year battle with breast cancer. This was announced by her daughter herself on Wednesday night. She was 57 years old. The daughter said on a Facebook post, "On behalf of our family, it is with absolute grief that I announced the death of my mother, Lydia De Vega, this evening, August 10, 2022, at the Makati Medical Center." This is according to Stephanie Mercado de Königswarter. In her Facebook post, she said she fought the very good fight and is now at peace. Stephanie said the wake details will be announced very soon, but for now, she said, "I would wholeheartedly appreciate the prayers for her mother." De Vega Mercado was dubbed the fastest woman in Asia in the 1980s, having won the 100-meter dash 9 times in the Southeast Asian Games, 9 times, and 4 times in the Asian Championship, and twice in the Asian Games. She also played in the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles and the 1988 Seoul Olympics. The Filipino sports legend from May Kawayan, Bulacan, retired from active competition in 1994. Almost 12 million pesos worth of cash incentives will be given out by the government through the Philippine Sports Commission and the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation to the medalists of the 11th ASEAN Para Games held in Salo, Indonesia from July 30 to August 6. 80 Filipino para-athletes from 9 sports, namely archery, athletics, badminton, basketball, chess, judo, powerlifting, swimming, and table tennis were mission accomplished in APG, winning a total of 104 medals, 28 gold, 30 silver, and 46 bronzes, good for a 5th place finish overall in the 11-nation showpiece. It was the best performance recorded by the country since the 2009 Games in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, with 24 gold, 24 silver, and 26 bronzes. Under Republic Act number 10699, or the Expanded National Athletes and Coaches Incentives and Benefits Act, gold, silver, and bronze medalists from the ASEAN Para Games are entitled to receive cash incentives worth 150,000, 75,000, and 30,000 pesos, respectively. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian region and beyond. This is Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.